Welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, my name is Casey. Today, we're continuing Brand Spotlight, my mini series where we look at fashion brands through a bigger lens. Not just what they sell, but where they came from, what they believed in, what made them stand out, and why some brands stay powerful while others lose their edge. Let's talk about Ganni, one of Denmark's most recognizable fashion exports. Before Ganni became a global fashion obsession, Scandinavian fashion had a very specific reputation. It was clean, minimal, neutral, and practical. Think muted colors, sharp tailoring, and quiet luxury, before quiet luxury became a trend. Then came Ganni, a brand that made Scandinavian fashion feel more playful, colorful, and approachable. Less beige minimalism, more leopard print, puff sleeves, cowboy boots, graphic tees, and printed dresses that felt cool without trying too hard. Ganni was founded in Copenhagen in 2000 by gallerist Frans Truelsen, but the brand we know today really began to take shape in 2009, when husband and wife duo Dita and Nikolai Refstrup took over. Dita became the creative force behind the brand, while Nikolai focused on business and strategy. And that combination is key to understanding Ganni's rise. Ganni did not grow like a traditional luxury house. It did not have a long heritage story, a famous founder myth, or a century-old archive. What it had was personality. Dita Refstrup helped turn Ganni into the opposite of what people expected from Scandinavian fashion. Instead of minimal perfection, Ganni offered clothes that felt expressive, wearable, and full of attitude. The pieces were styled but not stiff, fashionable but not intimidating, and that became the secret. Ganni understood that a new generation of shoppers did not necessarily want to look rich. They wanted to look interesting. They wanted clothes that felt easy, photogenic, recognizable, and real. That is where the idea of the Ganni Girl became so powerful. The Ganni Girl was cool but approachable. She could wear a feminine dress with chunky boots. She could make leopard print feel casual. She could mix something polished with something weird and somehow make it work. More importantly, she felt like part of a community. Through social media, street style, influencers, editors, and celebrities, Ganni became more than a brand. It became a world people wanted to be part of. The Ganni Girl's identity helped turn customers into ambassadors, and it gave the brand something many fashion labels struggle to create: belonging. Timing also played a huge role. In the 2000s, Instagram was changing how people discovered fashion. Street style became just as important as runway shows. Copenhagen Fashion Week was gaining global attention, and shoppers were looking for brands that felt more personal and less corporate. Ganni was perfectly positioned for that moment. Its pieces were recognizable enough to stand out online, but wearable enough for real life. They were expensive, but not traditional luxury expensive. That placed Ganni in a powerful middle ground, aspirational, but still somewhat reachable. As the cult following grew, the business grew with it. In 2017, private equity firm L. Catterton acquired a majority stake in Ganni, helping the brand expand internationally. From there, Ganni grew through stores, wholesale partners, collaborations, celebrity visibility, and Fashion Week momentum. What started as a niche Copenhagen label became a global contemporary fashion brand. But Ganni's rise is not just about clothes or hype. Another major part of its identity is responsibility. Ganni has been careful not to call itself a fully sustainable brand. Instead, it often talks about becoming more responsible. And that distinction matters because fashion is still built on production, consumption, shipping, and constant newness. Rather than claiming perfection, Ganni has built responsibility into its brand story while acknowledging that it still operates in an imperfect industry. The company has set a goal to reduce its absolute carbon emissions by 50% by 2027 from a 2021 baseline. It has also experimented with recycled fabrics, next-generation materials, leather alternatives, circularity programs, and more responsible sourcing. This has helped Ganni connect with modern consumers who want fashion that feels current but also more conscious. But it also creates one of the brand's biggest tensions because responsibility is expensive, innovation is difficult. Alternative materials do not always perform like traditional ones, and the bigger a fashion brand becomes, the harder it is to balance growth with climate goals. That tension is central to Ganni's story. The wins are clear. Ganni helped make Copenhagen style global. It built a loyal community. It created recognizable products. It expanded internationally. And it proved that a contemporary brand could use identity, social media, and culture to compete on a much bigger stage. But the struggles are just as important. First, Ganni has to fight trend fatigue. When a brand becomes known for certain pieces, like printed dresses, boots, and logo tees, it has to keep evolving without losing its identity. Second, Ganni has to navigate pricing. Part of its original appeal was that it felt like an accessible alternative to luxury. But as the brand grows and moves into a more elevated space, the question becomes, how expensive can Ganni get before it loses the customer who made it popular? Third, Ganni has to maintain authenticity while scaling. Its early magic came from feeling local, personal, spontaneous, and community driven. But global expansion brings more stores, more investors, more pressure, and more polished campaigns. The risk is that Ganni starts to feel less like a Copenhagen insider secret and more like a corporate fashion machine. And that brings us to the brand's current crossroads. In recent years, Ganni has pushed toward a more elevated position, including showing in Paris and leaning into the idea of progressive luxury. On paper, that makes sense. Paris brings visibility, luxury positioning can improve margins, and global growth requires more structure. But it also raises the biggest question in Ganni's story. Is Ganni supposed to become luxury? Or is Ganni powerful because it never felt like traditional luxury in the first place? That is what makes the brand so interesting right now. Ganni succeeded because it gave fashion a different kind of cool. Not cold, distant, or overly polished, but playful, social, expressive, and easy to recognize. It made Scandinavian fashion feel human. It made Copenhagen feel like a fashion capital by offering something different from Paris, Milan, or New York. The clothes were part of the appeal, but the attitude was bigger, and that is why Ganni's future depends on protecting that attitude. The brand can open more stores, show in bigger fashion capitals, develop better materials, and elevate its product. But if it becomes too polished, too expensive, or too disconnected from the community that built it, it risks losing the emotional connection that made it special. So the real question is not whether Ganni can grow. It already has. The real question is whether Ganni can keep growing and still feel like Ganni. Because in fashion, becoming popular is hard. But staying desirable after everyone knows your name, that is the real test. If there's another brand you want me to feature next in this series, let me know below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.